Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Mokwariola. Africa in recent years have witnessed tipping points for a turnaround generation at the forefront of a subtle revolution seeking to reawaken national consciousness and reshape pan-African ideologies by every means possible. Amidst today's struggle, history reminds us of the legend beyond a man, the legacy behind the music, and the lessons beneath the message of a man who saw the future more than 20 years before he died 20 years ago. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on the ongoing event of Felabration to celebrate the life and times of Fela and Kuti in Nigeria and around the world? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report and Africa Today will continue. Welcome on board.
Felabration is an annual music festival in Nigeria, conceived in 1998 by Yeni Anikulapo Kuti in memory and celebration of her father, Fela Kuti, a Nigerian musician and human rights activist known for pioneering the Afrobeat genre of music. The one-week-long event, which is held at the New Africa Shrine in Ikeja, attracts visitors from different countries and has been considered as an official tourist destination by the Lagos State government. Felabration is held on the week of Fela's birthday, featuring musical performances from top music acts from Nigeria and guest appearances from internationally acclaimed musicians and personalities. It also consists of street parades, symposia on social and topical issues, debates, and photo exhibitions. This year's event is special because it is 20 years since Fela passed on. In remembrance of the legacy Fela stood and fought for in his lifetime, the theme for this year is the prophecy. It comes with a chance to look back at history and examine what has changed with respect to the issues he raised while alive. Fela has been described as a man that means a lot to different kinds of people. To some, he's a grand innovator, and to others, an ordained prophet, because most of the things he said more than 20 years ago are still relevant today. He is also seen as an enigma, a cultural ambassador, a political activist, an artistic innovator, a maverick leader, an unusual music icon, of whom it will be very difficult to fill his space. In his lifetime, Fela released 182 songs, each of them having significant messages that transcends through time.
Welcome back. From Kalakuta Republic to the New Africa Shrine, Fela evolved to become the story and embodiment of Afrobeat music as it is known today. Whether he chose to rant on suffering and smiling or make jests of international thief, or even cry on sorrow, tears and blood, it was very easy for the common man to connect with the lyrics and simply say, yeah, yeah. Joining me in the studio on Africa Today, I have Dubi Imevore, a lawyer and cultural renaissance advocate. Good to have you here on the program. And I also have Kayode Eswola, lecturer at the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos. He joins me via phone. Good to have you both on the program. Now let me begin with you, Dubi.
Yeah.
Fela has been remembered, or is being remembered today for his music and his style. But to you as a person, what best reminds you of Fela Anikulapo Kuti?
First of all, apart from the music, like you said, he was somebody who awakened the African culture in me, personally. He exposed us to a lot of information that had been hitherto hidden from us. Like today we're talking about a book by Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Fela showed us books like that. There was also the one by the late Dr. Ben Yohanan, The Black Man of the Nile. These were books that actually highlighted the authentic African personality. And for me, that's what Fela represented. Fela was like a teacher to me. Yeah, cultural teacher.
And I also understand you had a bit of an experience with him. Could you share that with us?
Yes. Well, before Fela got into the Afrobeat, before he became the revolutionary musician that we know, we knew him as kids, as a high life musician. He used to come to my uncle's house to play. And, we used to play with him. We used to try to play the trumpet with him, that kind of thing. And I had the opportunity to visit him at home amongst friends. And Fela used to show us books. In fact, he actually brought our attention to a name called Kuti in one of the Egyptian pharaohs. So he was relating the name Kuti to Egypt, that kind of information. So he gave, we learned a lot from Fela. And as a matter of fact, I don't know whether you knew that Fela used to go into universities to lecture in those days.
Really?
Yes, and he had suitcases of books, rare books on African history. So to that extent, Fela assisted people like me to restore my African pride, as opposed to looking down on things that is innate about us. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, quite an image to remember of the late Fela. But let me quickly come to Kayode. Kayode, what do you make of the ongoing celebration of Fela, his life and times in Nigeria and around the world?
Thank you very much. It is not in any way surprising that Nigerians are beginning to appreciate and by extension celebrate Fela Anikulapo Kuti. It is something that is necessary if Africa must move forward. It is something that we must do if we must get out of this political, social, and economic quagmire that we as a nation, Nigeria, are facing, and that the world in its entirety is also facing. In other words, to answer your question directly, it is long overdue that we are beginning to appreciate Fela now. We thank God we are doing the right thing, and that right thing must continue and must increase tenfold every year, because doing so will only help Africa to get out of this mess that we are in.
And talking about Fela's style of music, we understand that he had this style of awakening the consciousness of the people politically and, of course, culturally. Now, what do you think sparked that kind of his style of music, if I would put it that way?
Fela, in my own view, was a musician with a difference. If you study his music very well, especially between 1970 and 1997, when he ancestalized, what you get are three patterns. The first phase was established at a time when Fela used his music to preach to people and government of Nigeria to do the right thing. In other words, it was a kind of orientation and reorientation that Fela started with in the 70s, trying to awaken their consciousness to do the right thing, to buy Africa, to promote Africa, to ensure that government does what is necessary, what is ideal to the people, etc., etc. However, because the prophet is never honored in his own home, Nigerians didn't listen. They considered Fela mostly as a riffraff, smoker, womanizer on the streets. And so the suffering continued on the part of the government. The government of Nigeria continued to be bullying the people. It continued to be repressive. The state turned upside down, and instead of Nigerians being citizens, they were just members of the public. Now, that led to the second phase of Fela's music, which was confrontational. Because people never listened, because government never listened, Fela began to confront the government and the political establishment, inciting the people to act in a revolutionary manner. But again, because of the contradictions of the failed state, of the post-colonial state, people never woke up to the responsibility. And so the Nigerian state had field day, messing up the people, repressing and suppressing them, including Fela himself. You will remember a series of attacks that were meted on his Kalakuta Republic, his residence, his personality, jailing and continuous jailing and harassment till he ancestorialized in 1997. So, after the period of confrontation, Fela got to the third period, which of, in my view, the period of cynicism. Fela became cynical of the whole situation. And from the album Look and Laugh, Fela began to laugh at Nigerian people and how they will continue to suffer if they refuse to listen to what he was saying and to the ideology he was trying to propagate.
All right, let me hold your thoughts for now, Kayode. We need to go on a very quick break. We'll be back with more discussions. We're talking about the ongoing event of Felabration to celebrate the life and times of Fela Anikulapo Kuti. Welcome back. Fela Anikulapo Kuti, popularly known as Abamieda by his fans, is arguably one of Africa's most controversial and inspirational cultural figures of all times. Until his death, he chose the side of the people to fight for the rights of the poor and disadvantaged despite harassment, arrest and imprisonment by the Nigerian government. Now, Dubi, before we went on break, Kayode Osuola, gave us his own perspective of Fela, his choice of music, his style, and what he set out to do in terms of promoting Africanism, awakening people's consciousness, and all that. It has always been his legacy, if I put it that way, to the Nigerian people and of course around Africa. But would you say that has really made an impact in the society today? Because like we were discussing before we came back on, he has been beating the drum, and the people have refused to dance in the way he wanted it to happen. Why are we sitting down?
First of all, let's be honest. The whole colonial mindset is very deeply entrenched in our society. It went on for God knows how many hundreds of years. Now, Fela started in the 60s. Some of us have been influenced, but the fact is that the whole trappings of colonialism is still very much with us. Some of us have been influenced, but I think Fela has set in motion, the train that should provide a kind of mass movement. And I think some of us are working at that. It might take time. A lot of younger people in society now are asking questions. If you look at the younger musicians of today, they will always tell you that they are influenced by Fela, right? And even if some of them, though they are entertainers, but some of them have certain messages that point to that revolutionary direction.
I was about to get to that point, because you would have many musicians today that do not really pass across messages. We have most of them singing to appeal to the audience in terms of just, dancing to the rhythm.
Yes. So I think it's a matter of time. Fela is like a prophet that came before his time, really, if you look at it. Initially, even I dare not tell my parents that I was going to watch Fela then.
Why not?
Fela was looked at as, confusing the young minds and all that kind of thing. But when I watched Fela, apart from the fact that his music really was electric, right? He used to, in between, he used to preach. And a lot of what he said resonated, with my inner self. And at times, Fela will say something, and you'll turn to Newsweek magazine or Time magazine, and you begin to read those things. Like when Fela was saying, they will give us water in 1990. This was in the 80s. And I read that story, that there's some plans from some of the international organizations to provide water for us in 1990. And Fela had sang it in his one of his numbers, So I feel that we are remembering Fela today, everybody is recognizing the work he did. So I believe that that legacy can continue to be a catalyst.
Right.
So that is the benefit. It may take time, but he has left something that can be built on.
All
so
right.
that's the way I put it.
All right, Kayode, from what Dubi has just mentioned now, how much longer do you think it will take before we finally see a turnaround, in our society, away from injustices, away from corruption, away from things that have put our country and, of course, Africa backward?
My sister, there is no straightforward answer to this question. It all depends on the people of Nigeria. It's visionary. If we as a people desire true turnaround in our country, if we want true revolution, if we want Africa to turn around and begin to change the Western world the way the Asian tigers are doing now, we must go back to the last decade. Emphatically, I repeat, we must go back to the last. And by that I mean the philosophy of Fela and Kuti. Until we do that, we cannot give a time frame. Nigeria will continue to parambulate.
So from your analysis, are you giving up already on, anyone perhaps that might, take the reins from Fela and, show the way out of the quagmire we've been all this while?
Well, I am not in any way giving up, but if we go back to Fela's music, especially Chop and Clean Man, Clean Heart, a new name for stealing. That's the name of the album. Anytime song, it will take 10 years after for Nigerian people to understand him. That was around 1985, 86. He now warned that the one he was singing at that time, we needed to understand immediately, otherwise we will continue to suffer. So when I say that until we go back to philosophy, we are likely to continue perambulating, I'm speaking from what Fela himself said. So at the risk of becoming a prophet of doom, there is no ideology that will salvage Nigeria today except the ideology of Fela. If you go back to all his albums, he has spoken everything. Is it about the Nigerian state? Is it a crisis of development? Is it federalism? Is it restructuring that people are, messing up now under political? Is it the question of citizenship? All these issues, critical issues, that are troubling Nigeria today, directly or indirectly, Fela already addressed. And he did not only address them, he analyzed them and a proper way forward. So if we need to move on as a nation, we must, and I emphasize again, we must return to philosophy. Otherwise, we will continue to perambulate.
And indeed, interestingly, Fela was seen as a prophet. Dubi, from what Kayode just mentioned, what can you chip in terms of what our leaders can do so that it will not be as though the legacies of Fela is, in vain, so to speak, but it really, really, really matters so that our next generation will have something to hold on to, not just Fela for celebration, but Fela for what he stood for, so we can have, something in the future.
What leaders are you talking about? Really and truly, I am not, I do not have confidence in any leadership, really. As it is now, what I have said earlier on, that Fela has set the stage, right? And it is for us, those of us who I will call conscious Africans, to take up the gauntlet and continue the work of creating the movement that will reorientate the minds of the people. There has to be a cultural renaissance. We cannot continue to copy. Fela had a song called COP, Country of Pain. He said, I don't know where this copy will take us to. Look at governance for us is about American or English style. Are we saying we don't have governance here? I read in the British Library on one occasion that the Oyomesi system of the Alaafin was one of the most developed democracies in the world. Why are we not reformatting that system? These are the kind of things that Fela was drawing our attention to. Let us get back to our culture, reformat it, and incorporate it in our national psyche. So those of us who have learned from Fela should take it up from there. You know, it's not about until we do something, until we gather ourselves and have a movement that will tear down those colonial structures. We ain't going to get anywhere.
So, but what is the first step towards achieving that? Because if
First
colonialism, we've all, you know, we've gone into education, we've applied a style. So, what exactly is the first step?
The first step is for us to get ourselves together and get properly educated about who we really are, what really is in our culture. I was talking to a professor, Mama Sophie Oluwole. She read philosophy. She has a PhD in philosophy. She said she studied Western philosophy in university, and then after her PhD, she now went to study Yoruba philosophy through the Ifa corpus, and she found out, in her opinion, that Orunmila was a greater philosophy than Socrates. How many of us really know what Orunmila's philosophy is? We don't
Perhaps you can tell us.
We don't even care.
Because you can start by telling us.
Yes, I have started. I actually have started. 2 weeks ago, we had a seminar to clarify a very crucial issue in Yoruba spirituality. The issue of whether Eshu is actually the Satan. Our Yoruba people will say Eshu and equate it to Satan. But in actual Yoruba worldview, we don't have the equivalent of Satan. You see, so these are the kind of things we need to get on. We need to begin to clarify. We need to begin to dismantle the misconceptions, you know, about who we really are. That is the Fela has thrown the gauntlet. We should take it up.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me quickly wrap up the show with Kayode. Any last words here?
Hello?
Yes, any last words here to what we've just discussed so far?
The last word is that for Africa to move forward, we must revisit the last philosophy. The philosophy of Aristotle, Plato, Karl Marx, and all these things, perhaps are very good, but maybe for Europe, for those parts of the world. For Africa, for Nigeria, we cannot move forward until we go to philosophy.
All right, let's leave it at that. Thanks a lot, Kayode Uswola, lecturer at the Department of Political Science, University of Lagos, and as well, Dubi Imobere, lawyer and cultural renaissance advocate. Thanks a lot for all you've said on this show.
Thank you.
For a man whose life and music highlights the ongoing exploitation in the society, yesterday's message has grown to become today's reality in Africa. 20 years since Fela passed on, it is time for the external values that gave birth to his perpetual struggle to gain new strength in the younger generation and help change present-day narratives for good. And that is our package for today. But don't forget to join the conversation, as usual, on Twitter at TVC News NG. And follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one, I am Esther Mopariola, and always remember, change starts with you.